There we go. We are live. Welcome, dear viewers, to another episode of the Seth Estrada Show. I have with me today the founder and CEO of SONM, Igor Lebedev. Did I say it correctly?
Yeah, but still I'm not the founder, but it's okay. I don't mind being named that way.
Okay, so for a brief moment, you got to be the founder. What is your actual title, Igor?
CTO. I'm just a technical director.
A lowly CTO. I get it. It's hard. It's hard at the C level. I get it. You have to keep titles. You have to keep titles in check, responsibilities, roles. Well, thank you for making time for us today. As you know, or if you've watched the show before, you know we'll sometimes get into some partially technical questions, and we'll do some deep dives and take questions from the audience that usually need either a CTO or bare minimum an early technical employee in order to, or engineering employee to answer. So thank you so much.
Okay, nice. Good. Let's do this.
Awesome. Okay, guys. So everyone's totally hung up on the lobby music, the music that I used before. So guys, it's not that serious. It's just something to make sure the live stream is working. But without further ado, let's jump into a quick screen share. And I'm going to pull up the SONM website right now. So there we go. Oh, wow. Yeah, it's showing everything. All right, so it looks like we've got very little lag between this system and then between what we've got going right here and then also what we have live streaming over to BitTube. If you guys are checked in over at BitTube, just know that I'm going to be making every effort to answer your questions from BitTube. And let me just do this also. There we go. Now we can all chat and kind of look at this stuff together. But just know that I'm going to be making every effort to answer your questions or have your questions asked from BitTube as well as we go through this content. So be sure that you're loud, you make yourself heard. Got a few different tabs open here, but let's start with just the SONM website. Decentralized fog computing platform. Help me understand just a little bit, Igor. What is the difference between by any other name, grid computing or decentralized compute or distributed computing and fog computing?
Well, it's these words that you mentioned, they lie in the different spheres, in the different in different spheres. Let's say grid computing is a type of computations when you have a determined task with determined inputs and outputs, and you can place it and solve it in a parallelized way. But the cloud computing or fog computing or distributed computing are a little bit different things. Let's say if we talk about decentralized or distributed computing, they are a little bit similar, and this is not something to compare with grid. Okay, grid computing is when you have a specific task, let's say a scientific calculation, and you need to do 1 million cycles of some computation, and you may split that across a network of computing nodes. If we talk about, this is a special software architecture that is not similar to, let's say, a web server. If you have a web server, you just deploy it on a server and it serves requests, as its name suggests. But the grid is different. It's when you have the task prior to launching this software. But decentralized computing or distributed computing is a little bit similar, but this is the change just of the names. It's as opposed to centralized computing. It's when you have some software which can be executed across number of computers. So what else did you mention? Did you mention fog computing as well, right?
Yes, and I'm wondering, so in clearest distinction, just a high-level statement as to what separates the difference between grid computing, distributed computing, and then fog computing.
These are not like the words that make opposite. They have something in similar.
Sure.
Grid application and grid computing may be doing on the fog computing environment. Like, let's say, grid is when you have a task and you can split it across 1 million nodes and solve it at once in a parallel way. This is grid computing. This may be done in a centralized data center or across fog computing or on the edge. So the fog computing itself is an approach as opposed to cloud computing. When you do cloud computing, your software is working in the data center, in one data center or in two data centers. But As opposed to that, your software may be working somewhere on the ground, near the user or near your location, near your enterprise. Let's say, I will just give you an example, like the smart cities. When we have a lot of cameras around the city, you probably want to process some data from the cameras near the cameras. Because if you stream thousands of video streams to a data center just to process faces, probably that would take too much of a bandwidth and a latency. So you probably want to do the first stage of processing near the cameras and then transfer only the extracted data to the data center. So this data will take fewer amount of megabytes. So this kind of processing near where the data happens to be, near where the data is generated, is called either edge computing or fog computing. So the difference between edge and fog, is also a matter of the words, but the edge computing is something that happens directly near the data generation process, in the factory, near the robot, or near the center, or exactly near the camera. But fog is somewhere in between the camera or a device and the cloud. It may be a computer nearby in the same building, let's say. So this is fog computing.
Got it. So it sounds like it's a question of attempting to increase efficiency of the network, then using the choice to go with fog computing over any other form of distributed computing.
Yeah. So yes. So if we make the opposite meanings, it's the cloud, it's the fog, and it is the edge. And there is a fourth option: the equipment on premises where you own this. Because typically in the cloud you just rent it, or in the fog or on the edge.
Right, and I know that so hybrid cloud has been an option for a lot of companies that are looking at, for example, asset management, right, between local storage for large volumes versus what is still in some cases cost prohibitive storage in cloud. On-prem makes a lot of sense. So awesome. Very cool. Thank you for the primer there on fog computing. And pardon my ignorance, because I didn't do a particularly deep dive into all the documentation before we set up our interview. But I know that a lot of my audience members are very curious. Just so that you're aware, most of the people tuning in are heavily invested into mining infrastructure. And so they're curious as to what other kinds of compute bounties their mining infrastructure can be leveraged for outside of just blockchain. So it's been suggested on several occasions that I reach out to the SONM team and that we talk a little bit about what it has to offer, what the unique selling proposition, right, or the unique value proposition is of SONM versus, say, today, Ethereum Classic, where as miners on GPUs, Ethereum Classic it's an attractive option. There are others as well if they want to mine a portfolio, but they wonder, okay, what if next quarter Ethereum Classic doesn't offer such a great return on my time invested as a miner? So with that kind of in mind, and then also considering, pretend like, and I know you've done this before. This is old for you. This is old hat. You can do this easily. Pretend like everybody in this audience is part of a VC panel, right? They want to invest in your project. They're not going to invest actual venture capital. They're going to invest infrastructure. Right, as miners and as data center operators, they want to be able to invest infrastructure into your project. I mean, disclosure statement: I'm not giving financial advice. I don't believe that Igor is soliciting investment, because we don't know if anybody is a qualified investor in the audience or not. But let's pretend that people in the audience want to invest their sunk cost infrastructure into computing, possibly for your project. So we'll frame the conversation that way to start.
Okay, so I may go on. Okay, so just to explain the SOM, I don't want to start from the solution itself or from the technology. I'd like to first explain the problem which we see, and SOM itself is a technology to solve something. So what is it? On the one side, we have, as you mentioned, crypto miners, and when we talk about mining, we don't mean ASICs at this moment. Probably there are some options for the future, but we generally mean GPUs, because GPUs are currently very performant computational unit, because they have thousands of nodes and they may effectively solve some computation tasks. So we have a lot of crypto miners, and all the GPUs are sold out on the planet. If you visit any shop in any country, you'll see that the prices for top level GPUs are very high, times or 2 times or 3 times higher than they normally are. And by the way, everyone has already forgot what was the normal prices for the GPUs, because all the prices are now high. So
right.
yeah,
I mean, we've discussed this on the channel a couple of times, that GPUs that are a year and a half, 2 years old, are still selling. They're reselling for higher than they retailed. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, but this is because, if we remember the last year, the 2017, it was probably the best year for crypto mining, because I remember the beginning of the year when Ethereum was $12 or then $50, and then it jumped to 300. So in that year, in 2017, it was the year of magic. It was the times when people have paid for their equipment in 1 month. If you purchased in March or in April of the last year, you could probably already get 2 or 3 times your investment into the crypto mining. But by now, as we see it at this moment, this magic times has probably gone. We have the crypto in the downtrend, the Bitcoin and the Ethereum, but people have purchased so many GPUs that they're currently excessive for the number of crypto mining tasks at this moment. If we combine Ethereum Classic, Zcash, and probably even Bitcoin Gold, just excuse me for naming this, but nevertheless, the projects that use GPUs, if we combine them all together, we will see that the number of GPU mining available at this moment is excessive. And if we calculate the mining profitability compared to the GPU prices, we will see that it's paying for itself in 3 years. So if you today purchase this hardware, you'll have to wait for 3 years. It's unimaginably long and low ROI for mining. People are used to pay for itself in half a year, but now we have 3 years. So on this side, we see that the profitability is falling, and the main Ethereum is planning to switch to proof of stake. The Ethereum Classic, they disabled the difficulty bomb, but nevertheless, this is not the biggest project. So this looks like there is some demand of the GPUs on the mining side. They'd like to have some more payload on them, right? So they can get more profits out of their equipment. It seems like that. And another thing is that at this moment, if we talk about crypto mining, they use mostly only GPUs, and they rarely use their CPU memory and disks and network. There are some projects, but they mainly use only GPU, but they could monetize other computer resources as well. So this is the one side of the problem. We have a lot of machines with GPUs on one side. And the other side, we have a boom of machine learning, and the industry trends if the people get used to do heavy computations on GPUs. This is mainly because the CPU has 10 cores, 20 cores, but GPU has 2, 3, 4,000. And for some tasks, this is times more performance. And if you're a business today and you'd like to do some calculations on GPU, you'd have to pay for expensive NVIDIA Teslas in the data center. And if we compare NVIDIA Tesla and let's say 1080s Ti, we'd see that this is pretty much the same thing, but NVIDIA Tesla being 5 or 10 times more expensive. And if we combine the data center costs altogether, we will see that this is really expensive. So we have two sides. We have business that wants to run some tasks. And which are these tasks? This is machine learning. This is video rendering on GPUs. This is big data processing. I've heard even about the SQL databases for the GPU. So now we have these two sides, and we just want to say, how do we combine them? So SONM approach is to combine these two groups of people, the crypto miners and the real tasks. And everything we do is dedicated for that. We do a marketplace. We allow people to run their machines. Our approach is different from you probably know another projects trying to do the computing power marketplace, but this approach is really different. Most of that projects don't use GPU, let's say, or they don't allow you to run the machine for the whole or part of your work, or they don't allow crypto mining when they don't have real tasks. So there are some huge differences. So the product is to combine these two groups of people on the market, and the price difference we have on the mining profitability and the rental cost of the enterprise GPU is times. We have multiple times compared the AWS prices let's say if you rent Tesla or with 1080 Ti GeForce series GPUs. This is times the price difference. So this is a marketplace.
Got it. Okay. So awesome. I've already had some questions down in the comments. Somebody asked when is when is mainnet live, and it sounds like SONM is already on LiveNet. Is that correct?
It is. Yes, exactly. We launched on the Saturday. Basically, less than a week ago, we are already in the live mode.
Awesome. That's great to hear. Let's talk a little bit. I'm gonna jump back a little bit. Thank you for the primer there on some of the economics. We'll kind of have a more dollars and cents conversation a little later on in the interview. But just because, again, I've got an audience full of miners, and as you know from experience with data center operators, bottom line is a big question, right? It's not the only thing. There are a lot of miners and a lot of data center operators who want to support the project because they see a future for it, but they also need to know what's profitable today. So we'll get to that. But let me ask, as far as looking at other projects that were headed in this direction, and there aren't many I know that have identified the exact same scope of work that SONM has. Some are different, I understand, but based on the projects that were already out there, why go a new direction with SONM as opposed to becoming a vocal faction of a project that already had maybe team, momentum, funding, or some other uniquely qualifying aspect to get the same vision achieved?
So did I understand correctly, answer, why did we start to do this from scratch and not join the other project?
Yes.
Well, if we compare, I did a lot of research. I may name more than 10 of the projects that seem similar to what we do. And I found something very similar for all of them. And I think that, and I believe that what we do is very different from them. Let's say most of the projects you may probably name, starting from the grid coin, IXEC, Golem, or some other of the projects, they are grid systems. And you asked it in the beginning about what is grid computation. And grid computation is a narrow and dedicated type of computation. And this is not something that is happening in the day-to-day life of the software. So most of the software is not grid software and will not work in that way. And I will give you a few simple examples. Let's say a web server. The web server is not a grid application. And most of the software, the YouTube or most of the things you use on your machine, these are not grid computing. So this is the first point. So our approach is to provide general computing. With SONM, you may launch any Linux application. So I can't just do that on that other projects. But I am myself a software developer with more than 10 years, probably 15, depending on what to count, nevertheless. So I just don't see practical usage for them. And we want to build a system for practical usage. So this is Linux applications.
Got it. So it sounds like then the other projects that were already started and already available were leaning more in the direction of grid computing, and you found that an unsatisfactory response to the market need. Does that sound right?
Yeah, yes, that sounds right. And I will give you an explanation why they did this. If we try to build a decentralized computing platform today, we will have basically only two choices. First is to go for the grid system, as the other projects did. And on that path, what we will have, we will be able to solve computing validation problem. Let's say we may just compare the results. So we may check our computing, and we will easily scale this. So on the platform level. So going for grid computing support gives you an ability to solve some things simply, because grid computing is simple to implement on the blockchain. It's like it benefits each other. Grid computing is something that scales well. You may check the computation, and this is good. But the practical application is very small. On the other side, if we go for general computing, the practical application is very large, very big, most of the software. But you have complex problems which are not solvable. So, there is no the right choice here. But at least we provide the second option.
Sure.
So I think this is a fair approach.
Okay, awesome. I'm getting a lot of very blunt questions in the comments, and Roderick, I appreciate you, brother. Thank you for showing up to ask tough, difficult questions, because I tend to lead through the project's core problem-solving goals, and I kind of feel like it's a little more fair to ask our guests what they intended to have the project solve, as opposed to maybe where the current state of the art is, maybe where the current market, not perceived market needs, but the validated market needs, where it's being actually in use and in production. So I'm getting some really cutthroat questions about mining and about calculating profits for fog compute. So definitely appreciate you guys. Let's pump the brakes there just a little bit. We'll get to that, I promise. Let me ask just a couple of questions before we get there, though, Igor. One of them was, as far as jumping back to the beginning, right after the ICO in 2017, you have a pool of funds to work from, which is great. I applaud projects that have real problems to solve, that attempt to raise real money to do it, because let's face it, development costs money. It's hard to create good products without funds. So I think it's great that you guys did that. It's not always the right choice for every project, but I think in this case, probably the best choice. So you started with a pool of funds post ICO. I think the total raise was in the vicinity of 42 million. Is that about right?
Something like that.
Okay. So you started with a pool of about 42 million. So you should have enough runway to get through a couple of years of aggressive development. What's the first problem that you and the team found that you needed to solve?
Well, this is a sudden change of the question. The first problem, well, we had to develop the prototype, the first simplest working version, and it took us almost a year to do this. So what we released today is a very simplified version of what we see in the future. So what we see in the future is a lot of more features to do. So I think the most essential was to release a product, and just trying to do that, we had to understand what we do. Because, at the start in the white paper, we had some bright ideas, but when we started to implement them, like to ask questions how we do this exactly, not theoretically, but today and tomorrow, we had to make the product vision.
Got it. So it sounds like you needed to outline the scope of work in order to get to MVP, was the first.
Yes, everything I tell you today about the market, about everything, this is a product vision we had developed after the ICO. We had to do some research. We researched the different projects. We decided how to implement it our way. So we decided not to do the grid system because there are a lot of grid systems already, but there is no system for general computing. We decided to do this. This was a choice made after the ICO. And this was part of the market research and part of the product work.
Got it. So market validation, interesting. Market validation post ICO is what told you needed to move away from grid computing. It wasn't necessarily the original vision.
Yes, this is like the self-aiming rocket. The rocket was launched, and now this rocket is seeking the market.
Got it. Makes sense. I mean, startup culture. Sometimes you have to build the projectile or the plane, the vehicle mid-flight.
Yeah, we built it on the fly. Exactly. This is exactly how we feel it. But some projects stick to the initial white paper, whatever the market is and whatever anyone thinks, because they have the money. Because we have all the money now, so we will do whatever we like now. We don't do what we like. We do what we think probably will work, because we want this project to survive all that will happen to the crypto in the upcoming years. We want to survive this.
Awesome. Well, I mean, if you've been watching any of the interviews that I've been doing, I think conceptually, certainly ideologically, I'm in support of that direction. I think that it's important for all of us who are into mining and into running data centers that are primarily GPU dominated data centers that are primarily geared towards mining, that we have to be flexible in our approach and in our thought process, and be prepared to seek out alternate bounties as well, whatever shape they take, just in case.
Yeah, and another, you asked about what was the first important thing. As part of the research and our correction of our product vision, it was important to understand who will buy this, who will use this. This is a simple question, but people seem to be scary of this question and not to answer this. So we think that it is very important who will use a product, will use a system, and we try to this group of people to be something real, some part of the real business. Not like theoretical future projects that may come or may not come, but we try to do a product that will be useful today for existing software and existing business.
Awesome. So let me ask us, and I apologize, I just interrupted, but along those lines, What do you find the market validation so far has taught the team? What assumptions did you have after you began to change direction? What assumptions did you find were broken as you started to do market validation when answering that question, who will buy this?
Well, the assumptions that we have found, we have clearly understand what types of software architectures and what type of use cases may benefit from SONM. And so far, we have confirmations from that. Just today, I'm just a little bit exhausted by the end of the day. I was visiting two business trips in the city, meeting with companies who are developing the software. And most of our use cases lie in the sphere of machine learning and video recognition, audio recognition, image recognition. This is a very broad software trend development. And what we do seems like this is of interest for that companies. So when we describe what we do, our pros and cons, because we clearly have some pros, but we have cons as well. And we describe them clearly. But seems like the overall value is greater than 0. And this is very important for us because, this is not a secret. All the projects in the blockchain sphere, they have difficulties with privacy. And for us, this is also a difficulty with software computation validity, because if we did the grid system, we could do check by replication and solve that. But for us, we have to do a different solution. This is one of the problems. But if we cut the price 3 times, when you're describing people that, yes, you have to develop something, but you will cut the cost 3 times, they look at you with interest anyway. So I think that we have some interest from companies, but still, this is a matter of development. But I forgot the question you first asked, starting to explain.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. The primary question is, as you were getting into that market validation to discover who would buy, clearly, I mean, early phases. This is the earlier phases in the startup, but you have funding, and you're starting to listen to the market, which I applaud. That's great that you listen to the market and you began to pivot based on what you started to hear in terms of market validation. So after you decided, okay, not grid compute, fog compute, what assumptions did you have about who would buy that were broken, and what did you learn about who the right market was to sell this to?
I think that one of the broken assumptions was the web hosting use case and the game hosting use cases. Probably so far, these use cases are the most weak. I will explain. If we go for gaming servers, most of them are already implemented to be hosted on a centralized, trusted hardware. If we ask them to implement Byzantine fault-tolerant backends, they fail to do this, and this is not of interest for them mainly. So if we develop a new game from scratch today, and if its backend is designed to work on a fog computing backend, it would be good. But most projects, and I'd say 100% of them, are not doing this.
Okay, so perhaps it's a question of efficiency and increased latency by moving from their current model to a fog model.
So yes, this is a failed use case, because I don't see the interest from the gaming community to change the backend model to run on the fog computer, neither for the grid system whatsoever. And another failed, probably less interesting solution in use cases is the web hosting. This is mainly because there are some tasks, like, let's say, SSL certificate storage on the computing nodes, which must be trusted. And another thing is the execution of the web backend and front end with the privacy concerns. So this is complicated to run web hosting, let's say, without special software development. If you do some special software development, let's say my favorite example is Proton Mail. It has double encryption. One is in the browser itself. If you do some special software development, you are fine to host even web servers on fog computing. But if you don't, it's out of the box is not working for you. But if you have, in some cases, it will work. If you have a complicated big system with front-end load balancers and backends, you may host, let's say, static content on fog computing to serve it locally. but probably you will want to keep running the backend on trusted servers. This is a problem. But on the other side, the successful use cases which proved to be interested is the rendering and it is the machine learning, and they're growing. So yeah.
Phenomenal. That's great. Yeah, and it sounds like you maybe had. I mean, I'm sure you had an idea that rendering would be a use case, and that machine learning would be potentially a use case, but that it might not be the dominant use cases for your business model when you first started. Is that about right?
We had a broad set of use cases probably that would be useful, and we just wanted to do a general solution that would fit them all. And we thought that machine learning would one of the major use cases just because it is in so much demand these days. The rendering is also in high demand because we allow like the commercial render engines to be run on SONM, not just the Blender as the open source.
Right. It's interesting you should mention that. So disclosure, I don't work for this company, but I have advised unofficially and on behalf of a company called MetaPipe, which was intended to be cloud workstations for visual effects, and so they were very interested in getting several different software publishers, the Foundry for Nuke, obviously Autodesk is a big one, and then some others on board. And this is a year in which those platforms have pushed aggressively to have their own cloud solutions. I'm sure you're aware. And so it's kind of an interesting ecosystem right now, the whole cloud visual effects and cloud CAD CAM, cloud simulation space. So I apologize for the interruption, but I just disclosure, audience. I've had some conversations with people who've had to engage in these negotiations before, and they're not trivial. They're just as hard a problem in some cases to solve as some of the technology layers. So I feel for you. How has it been going for you guys as far as finding software partners?
Talking about render, probably you've heard about, let's say, render token with the R&D. It's an Octane project to bring the Octane as a successful commercial render to the blockchain. And I think this would be a successful approach because they have a major commercial renders. What's important is used by people and people pay for this. So if they build their own network, it will be successful. But for them, this would be the question of attracting suppliers, the hardware suppliers. And they have to attract them particularly for rendering tasks. And when they don't have rendering tasks, probably they would be wasting time standing still. So our approach here is to fill the free time with mining. Probably it seems like something interesting probably for miners. But let's get back to the mining use cases. We have already conducted some practical tests of our platform, and we did one for rendering. We were posting this in my blog. I was posting this and on Twitter. What we did, we took a mining rig with 6 GPUs, and we launched the SONM, and we launched the Redshift renderer, and we launched a plugin called Deadline. And Deadline is a plugin that integrates into your IDE, like let's say the software where you are modeling the scheme. And when you push the button to render, if you have a deadline, it allows you to purchase resources in AWS, in cloud providers on demand, just to do the rendering. And we made a small plugin just to allow this deadline plugin, which is a plugin itself, to purchase resources in SONM. So you use your common software to do the scheme, you push the button to render, you open the commercial deadline software as a plugin, and it gains the ability to rent resources directly from SONM. So this is a seamless integration. And as a backend, we may use not only Redshift, but some other commercial render engines. So this just clearly works out of box. And this makes us confident in this case. So particularly for rendering, this is a special case because we have around 20 commercial render software. All of them are binaries. So we don't need to run some custom scripts. We just need to be able to launch custom Linux binaries on our system. And this is exactly what we did. And there is the problem that is typical for our system, we need the application on the side to do the orchestration, like to design, like let's say to define who will solve which task. And particularly for rendering, this is already solved. There are plugins like, as I mentioned, Deadline or Afanasi or other orchestrating software to orchestrate your render. And we are able to integrate with them.
Phenomenal. Let's ask a little bit about what the network looks like in terms of using the render orchestration software. There's a model for master nodes on the token side, right? For the SONM token. Now, are there service nodes? Is that how is a lot of this work being distributed?
Okay. If we talk about like a working practical use cases, let's say for rendering or machine learning or whatsoever, this is not in any way connected to master nodes of SON. Let's say
sure.
SON has a sub-level.
That's why I asked. I imagine master nodes as being typically different from service nodes, but that's why I asked with regards to service nodes, if that was perhaps a roadmap, like a point on the roadmap to increase the utility of the blockchain functions of SONM.
Yeah, our white paper is a little bit outdated. We are currently working to refresh it with. It will be probably rewritten from scratch. We already started doing this, but let's look at two different angles. From first point of view, is that from the application use case. Let's say if what is the typical use case for rendering is that you have a software on your machine, on your laptop, where you use it as an IDE to model the skin, the 3D skin itself. Then you have the Deadline plugin on your machine as well as a software. And then everything else, the rendering backend, the machines that do the rendering itself, they're on the SON network and they're the workers. And between you, the Deadline, and the workers lies the marketplace of SON, where you place the deals on the blockchain. And this works internally. What you have exactly on your machine is all the rendering things and one SON software, which is called API node. And the Deadline is capable with a special plugin to communicate with these nodes of SON, like your local nodes, SON node. And everything else is done by this node. The blockchain, the peer-to-peer, everything else, it just goes to the blockchain, places a deal, communicates with worker, places the task, everything that. You just make an order to deploy your rendering backend.
Got it. So the blockchain is essentially entirely a settlement layer. There's not actually utility with regards to the fog computing built into your blockchain yet.
The blockchain part is used internally. It's hidden from the user. The user is just using the local software. And the blockchain itself is a component that is foggy. The blockchain itself or the Ethereum itself is, in some way, this is fog computing in some sense. Not the best case, but it is.
Sure, but just to make sure that I understand, the way that the SONM token is used right now is as a settlement layer for paying for services and for but not necessarily as an orchestration layer for any kind of assistance to the fog compute system.
No. At this moment, we use the blockchain only for the management, just to clearly split who uses which resources.
Got it.
To settle the market. If we call it a supercomputer, if we do whatever distributed project, the first thing we need to clearly define is who owns which resources and who has the right to use which one. So this is the thing we solve with the blockchain and with smart contracts. And token is used to purchase the resources. Everything else is done peer-to-peer, out of chain, because if we bring the computations on chain, it's not performant enough. It just won't handle it. So this was the side of the customer. From the customer view, when we do some practical task, we only see one SON application, it's SON node. And it's not the master node, it's just like you have Ethereum node, you have Bitcoin node, just a SON node. It doesn't even pull the blockchain itself, it's just a light node, a small binary. And if we go to the SON internals, internally we have a SON sidechain with an Ethereum clone. We have proof of authority block producing nodes internally in SON. We have some special pieces like rendezvous server and relay, which allow network connectivity on peer-to-peer layer. We have a special facility for fast search and lookup on the blockchain, which is called data warehouse. And all that components are working internally under the hood. And on top of that, you only see the graphical user interface or the command line interface. You just see the market and you gain the ability to purchase resources. Everything else is under the hood.
Got it. Okay, and that kind of makes sense at this phase of any kind of, whatever the form of distributed compute is today. It makes sense that that there isn't as much contribution by the blockchain component, but that it is essentially for financial settlement and for ownership of jobs, so to speak. That makes sense. Let me just kind of I'll ask a couple of questions here. We're going to jump back. The audience has some very direct questions they want to get to because they are entrepreneurs. They want to know if there's a good use case for them, a really good fit for them as data center operators to see if they can support your project possibly today. So we'll get to that, guys. Hold your horses. I know Igor wants you on board. So he wants to answer this question. But let me ask, as far as team goes, we're going to pretend again like these are discerning investors with their infrastructure, and they want to know who's on your team and know a little bit about where you all come from. So what I'm going to do, I don't know why, I'm having a really tricky time getting a successful left click on your website. Maybe I blocked something, blocked the script or something, but tell me about a little bit about your team. Is there a public team page?
It was on the previous website, but now we don't share it on the public website. You know how it was going when on the ICO and the year after the ICO, essentially until we released our first live version, which is less than a week ago. We had a team page full of people faces, most of them from the development. Basically, we had only the development team faces there, even not all of them. But since we launched our first live product, we launched the new website, and our current feeling, how we feel ourselves, is that we feel ourselves as a software development company, as a private company which develops some software which is open source, but the company itself is private. And if you look at the typical private companies anywhere, you don't see faces of the whole team there. You just have the company, you have the brand. You probably see some top faces like the founders or probably C-level management, but you don't see the whole team. There are some reasons behind this. First is that the hiring of the people part. If we have some brilliant team, we probably don't want to share their faces everywhere because we care about them. Just
right.
Stay in the company.
Well, and you don't want to have them. You want to have them poached,
hunted. Yes.
Yeah, poached by your competitors. I mean, I do get that. At the same time, so you stand as a very public face as CTO. Are there any other above-the-line employees, C-level executives, or advisors that would help my audience to feel more confident in the longevity and future of your project?
Yeah, sure. We were telling this the whole year, so it's only less than a week that we stopped sharing our faces. So
okay.
Let's talk about this. You already know me from the speech, so we already have our two founders, Sergey and Alexey, which are from the ICO, and they managed to run all this unimaginable marketing to raise the funds and to imagine this idea which we are currently talking about. So Sergey and Alexey are already successful blockchain people, blockchain founders. But if we talk about the C-level management, all the people are hired from scratch after the ICO, including me. I was not on the ICO. I'm a hired person from professional software development.
This also from my perspective, I apologize for the interruption, but for my audience's benefit, from my perspective, this is a very good sign of responding to the success of an ICO or responding to the early fundraising efforts of a tech startup to then hire people who you have confidence will help bring you through the next phase of development. The CEO that brings you from 1 million in annual recurring revenue up to 10 million may not be capable of bringing you from 10 million to 50 million, and that person may not be capable of bringing you to 100 million in annual recurring revenue. So to be able to hire after you know, okay, we have funding and we have direction and we're getting market feedback, that to me actually is a very good sign. So apologies for the interruption, but I'm glad you were brought on after they raised funds. That's good.
Thank you. But I was really, when it was SONM ICO, I was one of the person like on the street, like looking at this from the outside. I was working on a different work. So, I tried to be very fast since after the ICO just to join the team to offer myself. So, but nevertheless, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for your comments. So the other C-level people, what we have, the notable persons are, let's say, Oleg Lyubimov. He's COO of the project. He's developing our business and development, like pointing our marketing efforts and combining this all together. Oleg is from a big cloud company, and he was working for the last 10 years, like selling the cloud services. And since the last 10 years, the cloud was changing dramatically from just bare metal rental to OpenStack and to special services on the cloud. So he knows cloud market very well, and he found some on his own as well, just as an interesting project. And we secretly had him as an advisor for some time, and finally we managed to offer him to join the company. So he clearly understands how cloud marketing is working because he was selling this for 10 years, for long 10 years.
Oh, right. No, selling cloud 10 years ago was very different from selling it today, like you were saying.
Yeah, but the software is different as well. There was no blockchain 15 years ago and many other software. When you're a specialist in something, you not only know the current state, but you only know the history of this. To understand what we have in the cloud today, it is good to understand how it was developed, the history of it, how it was going some years ago, what is it now. So you see the trend. When you see the trend, you have the vision. Because without the vision, you cannot just do the work. But to have the vision, you have to know the history. So I think this is very valuable. Oleg is he's currently writing our new business paper. He's helping our market to focus their efforts. But nevertheless, we also have some C-level people in marketing. We have Camila and Olga. They both work as senior management for marketing, and they're currently building some brilliant communications with mass media, with internet mass media. They have some plan. Some people are complaining about marketing in our chats, but I know their plan, and this plan exists, and this plan is about mass media, and they are working for this. Camila was working on the previous project on a virtual reality, like the augmented reality for cars. This was an interesting IT startup, also modern startup, so she knows how to do marketing for IT startups with some innovative ideas. Olga knows marketing very well as well. She is a winner of some marketing, I don't know how to say in English, some events for like creative people. What we also have, the major parts of the company is the tech department, the marketing, and the business one. So I named you the people for the departments. But in the recent days, we already got a new person for technical support. We now have technical support as a special part of the team, as a special department, where we have more than 10 people by this moment. And his name is Dmitry. He is from people management. He has a long track working in our chats, helping people on the early stages.
Dmitry was very good about engaging me on Telegram when I first reached out to the team. So he's on point.
So probably you already know him.
Yeah, I do. I don't know if everybody else does, but he was very responsive on Telegram, and it was a great experience to be able to reach out to the team and have someone engage me very personally. Let me jump into some questions that I have from the comments. First, I'm going to go over to BitTube because I don't want to leave them out. This is our first time simulcasting to YouTube and BitTube successfully, so huge thank you and congratulations to Saber Maram, who has launched the BitTube network, which is It's exciting. For me, anytime there are additional options outside of YouTube, I get excited. So let me engage those comments first. Joko asks about the limitations of cloud rendering, such as 1x PCI riser cards that are so popular among miners, and then bad internet. Maybe not bad per se, but low bandwidth, right? Most miners look for low latency, but not necessarily high bandwidth, which may be necessary for certain loads such as rendering, right? Rendering and streaming. But then also terrible CPUs. I know I've got a workstation here that I'm streaming on that's a Core i7, and another one over there that I'm streaming on that's a Core i7, but all of my other test benches are Celeron or lower. And that's true for many miners. How does that affect participation in SONM today?
Indeed, this affects, and these are valid concerns. But what is the vision here? First, all the existing mining hardware, why it's so good to have GPU mining? Because you can upgrade your PC. And so far, you are only getting money out of the GPU, so it's clearly was the right thing to purchase the cheap Celeron and put only 4 GB of memory. And yes, there is a point about the number of PCI lanes. So what is the solution? The solution is that I think the future, with or without SON, is the convergence of mining tasks and real tasks anyway. This anyway will happen. Everything NVIDIA is doing or other companies are trying to do, this leads to the whole same location where we have all the things combined. So anyway, go in that direction, we will have to upgrade our mining rigs and change our understanding of what is the optimal hardware configuration. So let's start from the PCI lanes. Of course, this is important. For some tasks, this is important more, for some less. You know, what we tested...
And for the record, by the way, anybody who's watching, on my workstation rigs, I use open air rigs just like a mining rig, but I always use 16-lane risers for GPUs there. Sorry for the interruption there, Igor, but it's very important to me to have all the bandwidth necessary. You're saying the optimal configuration for a computer that's going to contribute to SONM is?
Yes, sure. So let's look at the typical configuration of the mining rig. It's 6 or 8 GPUs, but if we look at the motherboard, it only has at most 5 or 6 slots, where we have only, let's say, 2 or 4 with more than one PCI lane. So our understanding of the right configuration of the mining rig with the SONM adoption is that you fill all the PCI slots you have with GPUs directly plugged in, and only the rest amount of them you have the risers. So if you have a motherboard and whatever the number of PCI slots you have with more than one lane, you should not use the one lane riser. You should update your risers, and the cable that you have showed, it's for 16 lanes. People should use this one, not the USB-free risers.
Oh, right. Yeah. So, I've always got a box full of those too for when I need them. But yeah, clearly this won't communicate in more than one lane.
Yeah, but I will tell you something. Like if you're currently earning, let's say, $100 per month with your 6 or 8 GPU farm, and what if I told you that you could earn $150 or $200 if you upgrade your PC? Probably you would want to update the number of PCI lanes. Probably you would even want to update your motherboard. If the question would be 1.5 or 100%, like so yes, the upgrade is required. If you don't do this, you would not be as much effective as you could be. Second is about the CPU and the memory. Of course, this one should also be updated, but luckily, what we have, the motherboard can be updated. So I think that the transformation will happen to the typical mining configuration, and people will upgrade. As soon as they will see that they have real tasks for rendering and for machine learning, and people with i7 CPUs and memory just receive 2 times more money, or at least 15 or 50% more money. This is a strong motivation to upgrade.
Sure. Yeah, the break-even point is definitely accessible if that's the case. I'm a huge proponent of the Core i7 7700K just because I know in mining, the socket LGA 1151 by Intel is extremely popular. So the Core i7 7700K is a direct fit replacement that gets you a full 4 physical cores and then 8 logical cores with hyperthreading. Does that seem like it's a good fit for SONM?
Yes, it sounds good, but this is not the only important point. The CPU is not the most important thing in our case. The important thing is the amount of memory on board of the motherboard and the PCI lanes. For PCI lanes, we mentioned the solution just to upgrade, not to use one-lane radars. But for memory, I was just talking today with a company doing machine learning. The rule of thumb is to have the number of memory on computer equal to the sum of video memory of your GPUs. So if you have, let's say, if you have 4 GPUs,
I've got workstation class GPUs here that have 32 gigabytes of memory.
Yeah, so this is probably the upper limit.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, and that's on one card. I mean, if I had multiples, I'd have to go past 128 gigs on the motherboard as well.
So I think that at this moment the typical top-level GPUs have 8 or 11 gigabytes of memory. So typical configuration will have a motherboard and 4 GPUs. In this configuration, this is not the best performing thing for crypto mining itself, but this is a universal rig design which will be good for mining and for rendering and for machine learning. And this probably will be effective, but still we will have to use it. We still will have to understand the exact perfect configuration. This is a matter of research.
Okay, got it. I'm getting some questions from T-Boy 1337, otherwise known as T-Boy Leet, over in BitTube. He's asking about the Acorn FPGA. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Acorn FPGA, but I had one of the developers, David Stanfill, on the show just a week ago, talking about a GPU mining accelerator that takes the M.2 form factor and is an FPGA that then functionally an FPGA mining coprocessor. And I'm wondering if there's any use case for FPGA co-processing in the SONM ecosystem.
The answer to your question is whether there is a use case for this FPGA coprocessor in any of the business tasks. So far, I am not an expert in FPGA and never use them for myself, to be honest. But from what I know, generally is that they are not used in frameworks like TensorFlow or Keras or whatever.
Sure, and it sounds like TensorFlow will be a heavily used exactly workflow.
And this is what we test. With SON.
So Titan V100 would be a phenomenal use case because you have the tensor cores already on.
Yep.
Okay.
So if you talk about FPGA, this seems like a very interesting hardware thing, and probably some people may like the future or opportunities with it, but I don't see today use cases for it for rendering or machine learning. And I don't see them, I don't understand how we can benefit from it. It's a good device, but how do we benefit from it?
Sure. Okay. Yeah, it makes sense. I guess that would require a lot more collaboration, I'm sure, with the current popular FPGA developers and SONM, and then your third party software partners.
Maybe in the future, if we see that some frameworks or some typical solutions would support the FPGA and make benefit of it, we will examine how we just make them available from inside the Docker.
Well, here's a thought, and I'm kind of spitballing here. I know you haven't retained me as a consultant or anything, so here's a freebie. But my thought is this: when you have so many GPU miners that are running on older commodity hardware, I say older, but aging commodity hardware, a la AMD RX 580 or GTX 1060, 1070, what have you, really good ROI on these cards, right? And very short break-even point relative to many others because of how efficient they are. Would it be possible to program an FPGA for those TensorFlow functions then and have that be put these cards into a more competitive space against the Titan V100?
This question is I probably don't know the right answer, but Did you mean that what is the opportunity to program, let's say, CUDA cores on FPGA?
No, no, more specifically, tensor cores.
Tensor cores, okay. What I know about the FPGAs is they're very light and they're fast to develop the hardware prototype, but they're not the fastest hardware solution. If they were fast enough, NVIDIA would be probably running the GPUs on FPGAs, but they're doing this as a direct hardware solution, like an ASIC, like a silicon. So what I understand is FPGAs are good for prototypes, but if you want a fast and efficient solution, you do silicon.
Sure, and I totally agree. I totally agree. Where I'm going with that question is that there are confirmed over 20 million GPUs that are currently securing blockchain networks, and many of them don't fall into the category of silicon that also bears the characteristics of the Titan V100 with these tensor cores. So I think anything that can put them into a more competitive space, if there's this shadow inventory of 20 million plus GPUs that maybe only lack a more streamlined tensor hardware tensor workflow, I wonder if perhaps that would allow them to become a little bit more. David, if you're tuned in, by the way, by all means, chime in the comments. I'd love to get your feedback. You can never tell who's watching. Actually, you can never tell who's watching from various hardware manufacturers. But I'm wondering if perhaps having an FPGA coprocessor that helps to maybe not replace tensor cores, right? Dedicated silicon for tensor cores, but maybe just accelerate as a coprocessor for TensorFlow.
To be honest, I don't understand how it can accelerate anything.
Okay, fair enough. Frankly, I don't understand either. I don't design hardware.
I will explain my point of view. Probably it is wrong. I will just judge from the general computing experience. So we have a CPU, we have a PCI lanes, we have a chipset. Let's say CPU bus, like the DMA to the chipset. Then we have PCI lanes to the GPUs. And anywhere on this path between the GPU, PCI, chipset, DMA, and CPU, we have the fastest speed possible. And we have the GPUs performing at their full power. I don't understand how any device on the perimeter of this may somehow help this. It will not speed the bus, it will not speed the GPU, it will not do anything, it will not extend your memory. So it may do some special tasks in a small amount of work, but it cannot speed it up. It's the same as a cup of tea will not speed up your car, or whatever.
Sure, but petroleum distillates will when you pour them into your gas tank. So that's why I'm asking. So let's make sure that we don't mix metaphors there. Right. So that's why I talk about the different kind of silicon. So keeping apples with apples and oranges with oranges. So a different kind of custom silicon which can be programmed to perhaps be more efficient at a specific task than GPU cores or shader cores specifically might do with TensorFlow, which is why I think NVIDIA included tensor cores on the V100. It's an interesting question, but I'll table that till the next time I have an FPGA developer on the show, and because now I'm really curious. You mentioned having the Titan V100 be a credit to a SONM contributor because of TensorFlow. So now I'm noodling over that one. I know my audience also, they're wondering, how can I extract the most profit from participation in a project like this? So I guess anyone who's in the in GPU Hoarders Discord or in the FPGA Discord, start bugging them, saying, "Hey, can you emulate tensor cores on FPGA?"
And the second question you should ask: if you can do, will it be able to be performant and efficient? Will it be more performant than a GPU? Right.
Or will it at least be split the difference between that gap between having, say, a Titan V100 today with custom silicon that's just for certain TensorFlow instructions.
But this is another interesting question. Is if you ask about the FPGA, this is one story. This is a story about if you had $1,000, how can you make more tensor cores out of your $1,000 to buy GPUs or to buy FPGAs? Probably you should go for the GPUs. But there are ASICs which are currently doing Bitcoin mining, and the companies currently doing ASICs, they could develop silicon specifically for the Tensor cores.
I want to say that that Bitmain had already expressed interest in doing this, so we may be late to the party.
Yeah, you've heard the stories about ASIC for Ethereum. This is essentially seems to be like a GPU ASIC. So if, let's say, we have an instruction set, a big instruction set for a typical GPU, if they implement only part of them, probably this may be efficient and this may be feasible.
Okay, awesome. Yeah,
probably this is the way to go.
I've got a couple of people who are admitting in the comments that that many of us miners will essentially be building regular servers again with dual GPU or dual CPU configurations and high memory and yeah, to start doing general compute workloads again. And I don't disagree. I think that's probably is the future of proof of work in my mind. But let's jump back. This has been phenomenal, Igor, by the way. To the audience, just so you know, Igor is not going to say, he's not going to complain or anything, but it's almost 1 a.m. your local time. It's getting into the early morning. So guys, hit that like button. Be sure to go and join the SONM Telegram channel as well, so that you can offer your congratulations and your thanks to Igor and the team for sparing him late into the night just to answer our questions here. But let me ask a couple other questions that are coming from the YouTube comments now. One is how to solve the problem that we have to feed testers. In addition, why will people switch from mining to SONM? SONM is now more like a discounted mining, but with less profit. Now, this is one person's opinion. I don't know that this can be provably true today, but maybe it is. You tell me. What's the incentive for miners?
This is a valid question indeed. So what we try to do is we try to bring, as I already mentioned this, we try to find a proper job from the real world for your mining equipment. But while we are doing this, and while we cannot fully load your machine with real tasks, the rest of the time the machine would be doing the mining. So speaking about the SONM in terms of mining profitability is not really the right way to say this, because this is, we with some degree of shy, we see this as a future of the mining because it is mixed with real tasks. So if you think about SONM as just as another nice hash, this is probably not the right approach. But still a good example to explain this. Think about as a nice hash. On the nice hash, you don't choose the coin which you are mining. You just contribute the hash rate, right? And someone else is purchasing this hash rate to mine some coins which you don't know. You don't know whether it be Ethereum or Ethereum Classic. You just contribute the ETH hash, right? So this is the approach of the nice hash. Imagine all the same thing, but you contribute not only the hash rate, but you contribute the whole computing power. And someone may be renting it for Ethereum or for Zcash or for rendering, and you don't know even that. So this is a similar approach. Why should it be more profitable? The general answer and the main reason is that the real tasks which are currently run by business, they pay to AWS 5 times more than you earn with your GPUs. They are paying 5 times more. Just accept this. Just compare the prices on AWS. Go and check their instance with Teslas and compare what we did. We compared rendering benchmarks for NVIDIA Teslas and for, let's say, 1080s or 1060s GeForces. And we find it comparable, but the price level, if you check the mining profitability on 1060s and you compare the rental price of the NVIDIA Tesla, you will find the huge price difference. So this is the main reason. The second reason is that SONM allows you to utilize all the hardware, not only the GPUs. We have some tasks for your CPU, let's say for Monero, or we plan to support some other tasks. We may rent your disk capacity as well and your network as well, because SONM may be used to host VPN-like proxies or proxy for Telegram or other things. So the second reason is that we fully utilize your hardware. So now your CPU is also earning money and your disk is earning money. And the third reason is that we build this as a marketplace, as an exchange, as NiceHash. So if you're currently choosing the coin, like what to mine with your own on SONM, you will be mining the most profitable coin available, because people people are able to purchase your computing power. If anyone comes to SONM Marketplace and sees that your computer is rented for a cheap price on Ethereum, and he knows how to mine music coin with 50% more profit, he will do this. And he will, because this is a marketplace and because anyone can rent it, if people know how to mine best coins, they may rent hardware on SONM for lower prices and pay you more, So this is the third reason.
Got it. So is this a marketplace in which you can price your own services then? Is that what I'm hearing? Is that you can?
Yes, you may price your GPU, let's say your hardware. You may say, I want 4 cents for one GPU and half of the processor and half of the memory. And if no one purchases, you may lower the price or bring it up. So this is a marketplace, an exchange.
Got it. Okay. Now I'm getting a couple of very tactical questions from a few of our miners in the audience here. I know for a fact are scaling up some of their GPU data centers right now. And one of them has been asking repeatedly, in the last week since launch, has there been, can you tell us what the median earnings have been like, or what's typical of, let's use as a baseline, a 6 or maybe an 8 GPU mining rig with GTI or GTX 1070 Ti's. We'll use that as sort of in between hardware.
It is hard for me to say the exact prices just out of my head, but while we are talking, I will try to open the interface and just check the prices as they are at this moment. I'll just open the market now.
Okay. And is this public facing? Is this something that I can mirror over here? Okay.
Yes. I may even send you the link probably. Just let me find it.
In fact, if you'd like to just share the screen, I can stop my screen share and you can initiate yours if you'd like.
Okay, just give me a few minutes. I'll prepare, okay?
Okay. All right, guys. So go ahead and prepare your comments as well while Igor is looking this up and your questions.
Yeah, while I am just looking for the way to show this, I will explain. We have, as I mentioned, the marketplace. So anyone may put an order on the market to purchase the hardware. Let's say if I know that one Ethereum megahash, let's say, earns, 1 cent per hour, I put an order that I will pay 10 cents for 10 megahashes for whoever will provide them to me, okay? So, just a second. Okay,
and while you're looking that up, I wanted to quickly call out the BitTube audience. Guys, thank you so much for the warm reception over there. I've noticed already over... over 69 tube that have been donated on this live stream alone. Guys, thank you so much. Just really appreciate the warm reception of the live stream over on the BitTube platform. If you're on YouTube and you haven't already checked out the channel over there, it's just bit.tube/mindyourbiz. And so we are there. T-Boy Leet is asking about make a calculator. I think that's what he's trying to do. And Russ YPT over on BitTube is saying, I'd love the ability to advertise my rigs for specific advocacies such as academic studies for small or disadvantaged universities at low fee rather than deep learning customers information for a high fee. I wonder, are there ways for you to, in that marketplace, for you to be selective about a broad categories or specific customer types that you want to do jobs for?
There is no, this is intended to be a system of a universal design. So you don't have a choice of the task type that you would like to contribute. Let's say only scientific or only rendering. You just run the hardware. You don't know what will be launched there.
Got it. I'm just curious if with other distributed systems such as, or decentralized systems such as, or service systems such as Uber, right? For example, you get a ride from a provider that you don't like, you can flag them as never
giving you
service.
This is something you can do. You may flag out providers or counterparties which you don't like. We have a blacklist, but you may sort them out by their IDs, but not by the type of the applications they run. Okay.
Got it. And I would say to anybody who's thinking about this from a mercenary bounty standpoint, I'm of the mindset that I wouldn't necessarily want to know exactly what's being run on my system either, precisely so that I could
Okay, Seth, I've sent you the link in the
Okay.
Zoom chat. This is a link to the web version of the interface. You may open it at your browser, by the way. Yeah, we will just see it on your screen, okay? So here we have a warning that SONM wallet can work with tokens, but this is not the right way to store your tokens because only cold storage. This is a wallet for utility usage. This is just a red warning, so we will say we warn you, so you're on your own now. Okay, just tick the I understand button.
Sure. Okay, so yeah, right. Oh, just I understand. Not don't show again. Ooh.
Yeah, so now the wallet will reside inside your browser local storage. So just add a name for it. Let's say just your name.
Whoa.
Just push a button, create a wallet. Just create the wallet.
Okay, got it.
No.
Yeah, I think I accidentally clicked outside of it. Yep. So I'll just create a test wallet then?
So yes, this is like a little bit similar to the MetaMask. So you put a name and you put a password for the storage inside your browser to keep your keys locally.
Okay.
Make sure to make the backup, and at the bottom select the LiveNet, not with the RingB. Just select the LiveNet.
Okay.
Okay. So create the wallet. This creates not the Ethereum key, but the storage inside your browser.
Okay. All right.
Okay, now we see the interface for the wallet itself, the crypto wallet. We have Ethereum and tokens here. Just create an account, the green button.
Okay.
This will generate Ethereum key. Just give a name and a password for your private key. Let it be work or test or whatever.
Okay. I should know better. I'm on autopilot to do at least 8 characters.
Okay, so far this was a little bit similar to Maether wallet or to MetaMask, but the rest of the things would be specific for SONM. Now you see, this is just Ethereum wallet so far, but on the upper you see the menu of the market. Just push the market.
Okay.
On the upper menu.
Okay. Ooh.
And then check the orders. And this way, now you are in the mode of the market, and on the top of you see the account you choose for it, and you currently don't have tokens here, so you can't purchase anything basically, but you see the offers here.
Okay.
What you see is the selling offers. What we have here, you see address. You see some of them are anonymous, some of them are registered, so we know the phone number for them. We don't know them for us, but they used it. And you see the hardware specifications here. See on the typical, okay. So just you cleared the.
I did. I filtered to only find people that had 3 CPUs. I wanted to clear some of the clutter, but.
Yeah. So far, okay. Just let's have a look. Let's see what we have. The line. You see, GPU yet a hash rate, GPU equal hash. So what we have here, we have 1 GPU unit, we have 3 gigabytes memory on the GPU, and we have some memory like for you to run the Docker container. We have some storage, 10 gigabytes available for you. We have some network here, you see?
Okay.
Oh, network not set up. So this is the prices which are current market prices available. And this is the example how you check it out, by the way. Another important thing to understand at this moment that this is just offers available, and there are some deals running on the background. You currently can't see them because we did not yet make an interface to see them, because this is still an early development. But so far, you already may see this. So how it works, I will explain. We have, on the one side, we have some workers which installed our software, and the software runs the benchmarks. It runs the benchmarks for GPU hash rates, for Ethereum, for Zcash, and everything, and this puts it on the market. And from the other side, we have a software bot monitoring profitability of Ethereum, monitoring profitability of Zcash, of Monero, and placing buy orders on this marketplace. So our software bot is not trying to make profit out of it. He just checks if I can earn 1 cent with 1 megahash, and if someone is selling me 11 megahashes, I am able to pay him 11 cents. So the purpose of this bot is to make sure that all the hardware is purchased and rented, so nothing waits its time. But this bot is open for anyone to adopt and to change. So if someone thinks he may do like profitable mining with Music Coin or let's say Ethereum Classic, feel free to take this bot, change the coin, and this is on open source, and just launch this bot on your site and purchase any resource for the price you see profitable, and try to deploy mining there, let's say Claymore, and have the price margin. You know, this is a competitive market, so like on the NiceHash.
Got it.
In this sense. But at the same marketplace, a person may purchase this same resource and deploy a renderer or deploy TensorFlow with the same interface.
Got it.
So this is the
okay,
idea.
so when you're buying compute via SONM, you can buy for any number of purposes then.
Yes, you just don't say the purpose, you just buy, you just rent the hardware for a time term. And then you may deploy Claymore, or if you don't need it anymore, let's say you rented it for rendering for a week, you did it in 2 days, and you just break the deal after that if you don't need it anymore. And then the worker goes to the market again, and someone will rent it for mining. So
got it. Okay. Very cool. I've got a question from the YouTube comments about attracting more users. And they say they're, the chicken and egg problem, right? Attracting more users. Well, if you want more suppliers, you need more customers. But if you want more customers, you need more suppliers. Has this been a dilemma for SONM so far?
Exactly. The question of the chicken and the egg is the problem. And by the way, the things we discussed in the previous 5 minutes is exactly the answer to the chicken and the problem, to the chicken and the egg problem. Because at this moment so far, of course, we have a few demand from the customers because we need to bring them. We need the marketing and the promotion. At this moment, some companies are working to adopt this, but these are currently only tests. But how do we attract the suppliers? The mining is already possible with SON. So if you believe that the computing tasks from real world are something feasible and the future, you may already prepare for them to land on your machine. So to do this, you may install SON today, and it will not be wasting time because it will be doing mining like the NiceHash. So the SON system itself, in the extreme mode, on the starting mode, may operate like NiceHash with only mining. But so in this way, we can attract only suppliers. And when we have a small pool of suppliers which we already have, we already may attract customers because we already have suppliers doing mining in the idle time.
Got it. Can I ask, as far as attracting customers using that business model, I've got a comment here from Roderick Crawford saying, give us more simplified GUI and you would probably double the amount of participants. And he makes the follow-up comment that if NiceHash had come out, if they had come out with a coin when they first came out with their model of NiceHash, right, distributed hash rates, that it'd probably be a top 10 coin. I think he's not wrong. They probably could have dominated the coin market cap had they decided to go that route. But what are your thoughts as far as user experience and the user experience, the roadmap here? Do you imagine this changing so that it's got almost the level of simplicity of, say, a NiceHash?
Oh, I'm sure this is not. I've tried NiceHash. It's one-click install. So the situation we have at this moment is that we have launched with less than a week with our minimal set of features. So the interface you see now, it's developed for the first time, and I'm not really satisfied with it yet. And I think many things may be simplified, but you see the interface for a person who is renting computing power on AWS or on Hetzner or on DigitalOcean. These people mostly know what is CPU and RAM. So this is a catalog of renting, like of computing instances, similar which you have in the cloud.
Right, and I agree with you. As somebody who's had to provision VPS on different platforms, this looks familiar. But speaking to the audience that where primarily my audience is suppliers, right, providers. So this doesn't bother them per se, but what they want to know is that people who are going to buy their services and drive up demand and hopefully drive up pricing as well, that it can be simplified for them. Not necessarily the one-click installer of any kind of a client on their end. They're happy to do a little more work and solve difficult problems. That's what makes their work valuable, right? But I think in order to attract customers who say, well, I want to purchase, a terahash of Dagger, right, of Ethash.
Yeah, the approach is here the following. Just 2 points I'd like to say. This is the interface of the raw SON market, like the market as it is. It is as you see. But if we look from the supplier's point of view, currently, for the suppliers, we have an install scripts which pretty much ease the things up. We have one line script to install the SON, but you already must have Debian and the drivers. And yesterday, I've seen a prototype, and I have an engineer working on a SON like Linux distribution, like SONM image installation, like simple mining, HiVos, and that kind of things.
Right. Well, so, I mean, there used to be these distro builders were really common.
Yes,
8 years ago, right?
And, yeah, they're very convenient, and we are already working on the one. And just yesterday, my engineer showed me the prototype of a generator for Linux image installer.
Great.
And what we have now, we already have it. We just need to combine the install script with one line to this installer and do some testing. So This is the future for the supplier. We will have just an image or a flash drive. Let's say you have a flash drive for a conference, you just plug it in. And the difference from HiVos or simple mining is just it's not running only the LiveNet, like only the Live CD, but it completely flushes your hard drive. It installs and formats the partitions and does everything for SON.
Got it. So there won't necessarily be a way to run from a live distro and then just mount the volumes that you already have on your hard drive with available space and check to make sure that can be used. It will completely take over all the resources?
Yes, it will completely take over of everything on your computer.
Okay.
But the reason for this is that if we talk about, let's say, simple mining or NiceHash, they run, like if you're running only miners, you have a set of small binaries which are like miners itself. Let's say you have a Claymore, you have an F miner, or whatever else, right? These are small binaries, and you may like pre-pack them with live CD. And you don't need to download anything or store anything, just run any of them. But if in SON, the customer may have a Docker container with his TensorFlow, with his scripts, with his databases, with his rendering, we need a disk storage. If you talk about the future of this whole story, we need the storage as well. So, but
right.
Anyway,
so I'm wondering, would it not be possible then for a provider then to already have a volume, that is maybe cleared and that can be mounted by a live distro for use?
This is the future of the development of this installation script, because the more options we have during the installation, the more complexity. Because the most simple option is just to reformat everything we see. But later, if this would be in the demand, if we see many people asking for this, we may implement a feature to use the existing disk. But still, for the full efficient use, we need disk quotas, and just to share the disk between different customers. And to do this, we need some specific file systems, and so we probably want to format your hard drive if we run SON like in fully dedicated mode. Probably we discussed this with the team. We can do a live CD mode with running small set of disk in the memory. So it won't be able to download big tasks, but for some small tasks, it may be running in the memory. But again, that would be only mining. If we want rendering to TensorFlow, we need your disk, okay?
Okay.
So this was about the first part of the question about the simplicity. This was the simplicity for the suppliers. We really work on this. But for the customer's part, the interface that you see is that all we have now from terms of simplicity, but the customers probably won't be using this with their hands. The whole purpose of this interface is to show you a graphical interface to make you a feeling of you understand what's going on, because the purchase of the resources should be used in automatic way, like through the API. So we see a typical usage for this via the API if the customer is having software bots. So probably the customer side would be completely automated. Let's say if some people are doing rendering, as I mentioned, the case with Deadline, he is not seeing this interface. He just runs his software for video processing. He has a Deadline plugin, and he doesn't even see this interface. He just pushes the button to render. And then internally on the marketplace, these things happen. So for the customer, the simplicity would be the integration to their known software.
Right. So I'm getting a couple of comments, and they're voicing some concern, and I share this actually. As far as having to re-image the OS drive of different machines on their networks and in their data centers, one of the concerns would just be the various different configurations of machines that they have in a smaller size data center. A Pixie boot might not be the perfect solution, so deployment of SONM might actually be difficult in that they have to install a fresh copy per system and walk through and do bespoke installation, as opposed to doing some kind of a net installation across their entire data center and quickly push their updates. But also I'm getting some pushback about clearing the entire OS volume and having it only be for a Debian Linux distro that has the SONM binaries. Yeah, there's a little bit of pushback from my audience right now, and I think I understand their reluctance, their reticence. The other question that I'm getting, because that's not really a question, so I apologize. I don't know how you respond to that, but I'm seeing some pushback. A question that I'm getting is it possible to work with SONM on Windows?
Yeah, okay. Let me handle all these three questions. Let's
Sure.
say from the network boot. SONM itself is just a middleware which runs on Linux with Docker. And there are different install options. So live CD and install from the flash drive is probably the simplest options that we would like to develop for people who, for whom this is acceptable. But this is not the only option. If you have a data center environment and you are running this on hundreds of machines and you don't want to do a manual install for each one, you may prepare just a Debian install from the network and just pack SONM as a package there, because SONM is distributed as Debian packages. So
Okay.
if you have a working solution to do network booting and network install for Debian, and you after that are able to roll on packages, so you may install SONM that way, because SONM is just inside the package system, inside the apt-get.
Got it. Okay, so this is not. So it is any other network install or net boot solution should work.
This is not something that we provide out of the box, but if you're like DevOps or system administrator capable of maintaining the data center, probably you know how to do network boot for Debian. And if you're able to do this, you probably know how to install packets remotely. So SONM is a packet system. No,
Got it. Okay.
So the next, about the hard drives. Probably we want to add support. Let's say if you have a hard drive with installed Windows, with drivers and with Claymore, or with, let's say, Simple Miner or whatever. And if you just plug in another drive for SONM, another hard disk drive, so probably we want to add support for you to choose the disk drive, which will be used like only for SONM, and the other keep the other disk for the other operating system. You may already have that. So probably we want to do this, but this would be like the second feature after we release the first live CD. So yes, this is feasible. We understand that for some cases you probably want to keep the existing partitions, but just if we agree that you provide another hard disk drive and you will just select the hard disk. By the way, it's already implemented. During the install, you type the device of the Linux, but nevertheless, this is possible.
Right.
The last question about the Windows. The whole story why we run Linux is because the customer has to distribute his software. Customer software is different, and the currently typical and the standard in the industry way to distribute your application is a Docker container. This is like the golden standard in these days. Docker requires Linux runtime, and so this is Linux. So we are tied to the Linux environment, and Linux runs on Linux, right? So if you have a machine with Linux as a host, there are a number of options how you can run Linux there and SONM there. First, you may install virtual machine and run SONM inside the virtual machine. So you have Windows, let's say VirtualBox, and inside there is SONM. But this is not efficient because it will not allow GPU support. And without GPU, this is nothing. Second, new versions of Windows have like embedded Linux core, and they are able to run Docker on their own. But I didn't test, and I don't know if they support GPU as well.
Right. I know there's quite a bit of limited functionality. Interesting side story: when Microsoft added when they added Bash to Windows, or rather when Ubuntu loaned it, Canonical loaned it to Microsoft. I tried installing the Swift libraries just because I thought it'd be a really funny thing to try Apple development on Windows.
Yeah,
it didn't work.
So at the end of the day, this is a question about the efficiency, because even technically this is possible to run it on Windows, but with overhead of the virtualization, all the embedded Linux, and without GPUs. And totally at the end of the day, you probably want to consider Linux. And even if we provide you the Flash install image, probably this would ease your pain to abandon Windows. I hope so.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Well, I mean, my channel, certainly, I know some of the people who are mining on Windows, they're tired of hearing me recommend that they try Simple Mining OS and Hive OS, and that they become more comfortable navigating in the shell, right, and using Bash and other commands. But I tend to agree. If we're going to be even remotely technical and be service providers in this space, then we all kind of have to level up our skill set there. But let me ask a couple of other questions from the comments here.
Sure.
Balakranian asks, I think the real world tasks are supposed to pay more than mining. And if they're not, a bot goes around buying your rigs and computers at a break-even point. So the advantage is real. Real world tasks should pay more. Are we going to, to what extent will a new service provider be able to see profit today? And let's maybe bring this back to the value in SONM tokens today, as opposed to the USD that's listed here, because they are paid out, right? Jobs are paid out in SNM.
Yes.
Okay.
How it works?
Okay. So as far as that balance between having there be primarily blockchain jobs, right, hashing jobs, versus any other jobs that come through SONM, so far this week, what is that? How is that? How is that broken down by way of profitability? I think you intended to show me a profitability calculator. Or should we be? I mean, I know this is part of it.
Okay. As I mentioned, we have just launched this. So our nearest goals is to develop the profitability calculator as a different website. So we have such a goal, and we currently think how to do this, because this is, for some reason, this is complicated to do a calculator. But we plan to do this. So currently we just don't have it, and you may calculate, as I mentioned, if you have a GPU, you may just check the mining profitability for the GPU, and you may expect to receive not less than the mining profitability, because at least our bot will purchase your GPU for the purpose of mining and at least pay you that amount. So this is the first price. You mentioned the prices which are in the USD, as you see. The reason for this is that we are thinking about us as a client-oriented software. So for the client, it should be more convenient, the prices in the USD. So we internally, inside the smart contracts, we pay with SONM, of course, we pay with our tokens, but the prices are in the USD, and the amount of tokens you receive may dynamically change according to the prices. and we have an oracle for smart contract that checks the price of the USD and SON pair. And so when you make a deal, you settle the price in the USD, but whatever the price rises and drops, you will receive an amount of SON tokens equal to the USD price you settle based on the current price. Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, we plan to do the calculator, but not at this time. And yes, if you just imagine, if mining, if real world tasks were not more profitable than mining, so if mining was more profitable, you may imagine that mining would be running in the data center on AWS and everywhere, but it is not. People do not rent AWS to do mining because you will pay more on the AWS that you will earn with mining. You clearly understand this, right? Because everyone understands that you probably can't rent an instance in the cloud and run mining there because it will cost you more. So, but there are some people who are paying this more. Who are they? This is the real customers, the real applications. So this are like easy mental experiment shows that the mining is earning fewer than the cloud providers are charging the customers.
Okay. Awesome. I think we've gone back around to this question. It sounds like at this point, this is the best representation we can get of profitability today. And
yeah, so far this is just a simple, but later we will do the calculator, but so far just this simple explanation, right?
Awesome. So, Roderick makes the comment that in his mind that we are far from normalizing this use case on a large scale. So at the moment you are functionally like nice hash. I think that's maybe a little bit blunt, but maybe not too far off. I mean, right now it seems like the primary use case is securing other blockchain networks and bringing on suppliers with something to do. You're not going to do nothing as a supplier.
Sure. This is fair comment. This is fair because so far, while we are only experimented with real customers, we indeed work similar to the nice hash. But the difference is that tomorrow we will bring real customers, and this will not be a nice hash anymore. This will be the new kind of a system, which is SONM itself.
Got it. Wow. So without getting too far into nuts and bolts, it's been an hour and 45 minutes. I know it's getting late in your current time. I mean, I would love to have you back on the show if you're open to that. We've gotten really great engagement from the audience, and I've seen the comment in a couple of places that they'd love to do another deep dive with you and kind of be more tactical, showing how to set up perhaps SONM jobs, distributed jobs, especially with so many proof of work algorithms changing recently. I know I had to compile a brand new fork of XMR stack on a machine just the other day because it changed in less than 24 hours. So yeah, I mean, so being able to deploy jobs like that, I think it'd be really valuable to be able to see how that goes. Would you be open to coming back on the show at some point in the future?
Sorry, just can you repeat the last question about the future?
Sure. My audience has loved having you on the show. We'd love to have you back. Would you be open to coming back at some point in the future?
Sure. If you invite me, I will be able to come again, and I will be willing to do this. Sure.
Great.
I think that this is good if we have like a reaction from the community. If someone finds this interesting, so I'm willing to speak about this again. If you like.
Fantastic. And let me ask a couple of quick, just sort of lightning round questions. And these are important to my audience because many of them are GPU miners. But the first one would be ASIC resistance, air quotes, ASIC resistance. Does it matter? Why does it matter? If it matters, why?
It matters. It matters because ASIC, this is not directly related to SONM. It matters and it doesn't matter. I will explain why it matters because people think that ASIC resistant, like being able to mine only on GPU for some coin, makes it more resistant because the GPU hardware is more spreaded. Like if we think about the ASICs, which are like consolidated in a small number of companies, this is less decentralized. but the GPUs are sold out on the whole planet. And even the fact that only NVIDIA and AMD produces the GPUs, only 2 companies produce them, but the number of people which have them is a great number. So it's more decentralized than only ASICs. So this is the reason why it matters. But from the other side, it doesn't matter at all, really, because Bitcoin is mined on ASICs and it's pretty much stable. And if you really centralize the mining power equal to the Bitcoin in mining power, you do not behave badly, because if you have ASICs for some cryptocurrency and you control most of it and you behave badly, this coin will lose its price and your hardware will become nothing. So if you have the power of a thing like a Bitcoin, you just behave correctly. So this is complicated, but I think mostly it matters. Being ASIC resistant, it matters after all. Sorry for not answering fast, because this is complex.
Yeah, no worries. I tend to agree. We can only outrun ASICs for so long, but in the meantime, it does make sense to try to make a use case for so many GPUs, because there are tens of millions of them already. So it would be sad to leave them not doing much. Proof of work in general, where do you believe it's headed? I think you already mentioned this in our interview, and I think my audience is probably tired of hearing me say it, but where do you think the proof of work is headed in general?
I am Bitcoin believer and I am proof of work believer, because this was the first option to consensus algorithm, and this was right, and this is proven by time. This is not energy efficient, but who cares? So just who cares? Green energy, right? But who cares? This works. So I think proof of work has the future, because after all, this is the only valid, really decentralized consensus algorithm, because proof of stake, proof of authority, and they are not really that much decentralized. So
right.
I think that even that if Ethereum will go to proof of stake, this is a doubtful decision, but after all, if they go for this, some more projects may appear with proof of work, because this is a good architectural solution. And my honest opinion is that proof of work is not, if you want to make Ethereum scalable, fighting the proof of work and change it with proof of stake doesn't solve the scalability question. The scalability is about the sidechains, about the plasma, about the sharding, but not about the consensus algorithm. It may work on the proof of work, I think. So I think proof of work will exist in the future, but the question is, will it be profitable for people? Because the golden age of the 217 has gone when the cryptocurrency was rising. So I would
argue that the golden age was somewhere around between 2011 and 2013, when so many projects were CPU mineable, right? I mean, and then stepping into GPUs just barely.
So my opinion is that proof of work will stay with us, but the opportunity to raise unimaginable funds with it, the opportunity will be lower. So it just more and more looks like it's just a business. It's just a common business with a revenue, like the raise of investment for 3 years. It will be maybe 4 years in the future. So it doesn't look anymore like a thing that will make you instantly rich.
Bummer. We got to work for it now. Well, I think I agree with you in general, Igor, that proof of work, that we need to look for hybrid models. When I say the words proof of useful work, what comes to mind for you?
Yeah, sure. This, by the way, thing I wanted to mention, and thanks for reminding about this. One of the future cases of the proof of work would be to not just wasting energy on useless things, but let's say we can imagine a proof of work scheme for training neural network. So this is about PnP tasks. So currently you are just solving the hashes, finding the right share, and then you show the share. But if you are doing something useful, let's say train a neural network, and you do a lot of training, and after all you show what you've got, and people are able to check it, and you may check it fast. So proof of work may evolve into something usable.
Okay, yeah, I think I agree. And let me just ask, these are the final 2 questions. They're the most important questions of all the interviews that I do. If you've seen my interviews before, then you already know that these 2 questions are coming. But the first question is, when were you going to transfer me those 25,000 SNM tokens that you promised for this interview?
Do you want us to discuss this publicly, or we keep it as agreed in a private?
I think, well, both publicly and privately. This is my joke. I didn't ask you for a speaking fee or for an interview fee, did I?
No, you didn't.
Okay, and I never will. That's my promise to my community. I think these kinds of conversations, they need to be held in the open, without feeling like the system is being gamed. You know, did I provide you a list of questions before we started our interview?
I begged you, but you didn't.
Well, and you're not the first person that I've denied a list of questions. But by the same token, if you were to have paid me in exchange for those questions, the audience would know that you're not answering these questions off the cuff, or that we're not really trying to discover. We're not really trying to discover perhaps a new perspective for them, or exchange ideas in a fair and equitable and unbiased way. So.
Yeah, but it was just a surprising question for me a little bit, but I just wanted to help you to maintain the joke. So if you
well, you did a great job. You almost got me there, man. My audience is saying, "Hey, wait a second, I thought this was..." And
no,
then,
of course, honestly, I was surprised that we made this interview. I'm happy this is completely free of charge for us. So I'm willing to attend it again.
Right? Yeah, the price is right. So
I like the price.
And here is the last question. This is probably the most important, and this has to do with legacy of your project. So, as you know, well-funded projects that are community-based, right? Open source, free and open source projects that are entirely contributed to by volunteers. It doesn't matter what the kind of project is. Occasionally, it can just be really hard to forecast what the next 5 to 10 years will bring. 5 to 10 years from now, what do you want people to look back on for the SONM project, or maybe the founding team, just the work that you've put into it so far? What do you want them to remember about the SONM project, the team, and the work that you put in?
I would like them to remember that we were doing a practical use case for the early technology of the blockchain, because blockchain is very young still. It's still not scalable. And what we are doing every day, we are trying to make the best out of the blockchain, because it's really complicated. It's really not handy. It's not friendly. The blockchain we use. We try to find the practical use cases for the sake of us all. So I think this is important. We want to influence the future of the mining and find it something useful, something from the business. So probably this is it. I don't know what to, and probably we want people to remember us as trying to do our best for this, because we're released on time. This is the third time we're released on time. This is important. We didn't take 1 year additional efforts. So yeah, we're just doing our best, what we can do here.
Okay, phenomenal. I don't think anybody can criticize you for putting in a solid effort there, and for attempting to do something that's very different. And I applaud your efforts so far. I think this is absolutely an important step in the right direction in terms of transforming what is currently a huge inventory of GPUs and potentially allowing them to have a new lease on life for doing compute bounties for hire. So definitely applaud the work you're doing.
Help. We would like to help. Make mining great again.
You guys heard it here first. Igor, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you being on the show. Guys, if you haven't already, anybody else in the comments, if you haven't already left a comment for Igor, if you haven't already gone over to their Telegram channel, I'll be sure to post a link after we post this on both BitTube and YouTube. Guys, remember, you're the reason that I make these videos. I will see you in the next one.
Yes, Seth, thank you very much for this video. I really like it. And the time passed very fast, even that we are already talking for almost 2 hours, but I didn't even notice how it was going. So it was one of the greatest talk I had over the internet. So
wow,
thank you for this.
Well, I appreciate that. High compliment. All right, guys, we will see you next time. I'm going to stay on the line with Igor. We're going to chat a little bit, but guys, we'll see you on the next video.